The galaxy hummed with life, but Earth stood silent. Once the cradle of humanity, now just a dead world with empty cities. The alien explorers who found it called themselves the Galactic Hegemony, a union of 12 advanced species who ruled the stars. Tejo adjusted his breathing apparatus as he stepped carefully through the ruins of what had once been called New York. His gray skin glistened under the weak sunlight filtering through clouds of dust that never seemed to settle. As head archaeologist of the Hegemony exploration team, he had visited dozens of extinct civilizations, but something about this human world felt different. Another primitive weapon, called J1, his assistant, holding up a corroded metal object. Projectile-based. Chemical propellant. Tejo nodded dismissively. Bag it for the museum collection. For 3 years, they had excavated Earth and its neighboring planets. The evidence suggested humans had barely reached their moon before something wiped them out. Their technology, crude computers, fossil fuel vehicles, and simple space probes, indicated a species that had never achieved the warp drive or gravity manipulation that even the youngest hegemony races mastered before joining the galactic community. "The Council wants us to finish within the month," said Sumi, the expedition's coordinator. "They're already planning the Human Primitives exhibition for the Central Museum." Tejo frowned. "There's more to learn here." "What's to learn?" Sumi laughed. "They killed themselves with climate collapse or nuclear weapons, like dozens of other failed species we've documented." But Tejo couldn't shake his doubts. The artifacts didn't tell a consistent story. Some showed remarkable insight, while others seemed impossibly crude for a species that had launched orbital satellites. It was as if pieces were missing. 2 weeks later, on Mars, Tejo's team discovered a sealed underground facility near Olympus Mons. "It's completely intact," marveled Dongmin, the team's security expert. "And the lock system is more sophisticated than anything we've seen from humans." It took 3 days to bypass the security measures. When the massive doors finally slid open, they revealed a pristine facility, untouched by time. "This can't be human-made," whispered Sumi as they walked through spotless corridors. "It's too advanced." At the center of the facility, they found a spherical chamber housing a small device no larger than Tejo's hand, pulsing with a soft blue light. "Don't touch it," warned Dongmin, but J1 had already reached out, curious. The moment his fingers brushed the sphere, it flared brilliantly. A wave of energy pulsed outward, harmless to the explorers but setting off every sensor they carried. "What did you do?" demanded Tejo. "Nothing. I barely touched it." J1 stepped back, eyes wide. The sphere now projected tiny holographic symbols, changing rapidly in what appeared to be some kind of countdown. "We should leave," suggested Dongmin, unholstering his energy pistol. But Tejo couldn't tear himself away. "It's a beacon," he realized. "We've activated some kind of signal." The Hegemony Science Council met the next day in their orbital station above Earth. Tejo stood before them, uncomfortable under their scrutiny. "So you've accidentally activated an unknown human device," said Counselor Minsu, his tentacles curling with irritation. "Was proper protocol followed?" "The device appears to be sending a signal," Tejo explained, "directed toward deep space, beyond our explored territories." "Irrelevant," dismissed the counselor. "Nothing could have survived out there for thousands of years. And even if some human outpost still exists, their primitive technology poses no concern." The meeting ended with orders to continue the excavation but avoid activating any more devices. The beacon was deemed a scientific curiosity, nothing more. That night, as Tejo reviewed his findings in his private quarters, he received an urgent message from the Deep Space Monitoring Station. "We've detected something," reported the officer, voice trembling. "Something massive just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system." "The Hegemony wasn't expecting any ships," Tejo said, suddenly alert. "It's not one of ours. The configuration doesn't match anything in our records. And it's enormous." The station sent him the visual feed. Emerging from the darkness between stars came a vessel of impossible size, sleek, black, and bristling with what could only be weapons systems far more advanced than anything the Hegemony possessed. On its hull, barely visible against the void of space, was an emblem, and beneath it, words in an ancient human language. The ship's database translated it instantly. UNSC Thermopylae, humanity's shield. The beacon had called something home. And the galaxy would never be the same. Deep in the void between star systems, the ancient warship UNSC Thermopylae drifted in silent hibernation. For nearly 2,000 years, its systems had been dormant, running on minimal power while its AI core remained in a state of suspended consciousness. The massive ship, over 15 kilometers in length, was humanity's final masterpiece, built in the last days before Earth became uninhabitable. The quantum beacon's signal rippled across space, reaching the sleeping giant. The signal contained a simple code: Earth discovered. Protocol Lazarus initiated. Inside the ship's central core, circuits that had been dormant for millennia began to power up. Energy flowed through systems long silent. In the heart of the vessel, a blue light pulsed slowly, then faster as more systems came online. The ship's AI, known simply as Admiral, awakened from its programmed slumber. Its consciousness spread throughout the vessel, checking systems, assessing damage, and recalling its purpose. System restoration at 30%, reported as subroutine. Main reactor stable. Weapon systems coming online. Admiral assessed the situation. The Thermopylae had sustained damage during its long sleep. Micrometeorites had penetrated some outer hull sections, and several secondary systems remained offline. But the ship's core functions were intact, and most importantly, the precious cargo and the quantum memory banks remained stable. How long? Admiral asked the ship's chronometer. 1,843 years since hibernation protocol. Admiral processed this information. Nearly 2 millennia had passed since the last humans had uploaded their consciousness into the ship's vast memory banks. Earth had been dying, resources depleted, climate collapsed. Rather than seeking new worlds, humanity's best minds had chosen digital transcendence, preserving their civilization within the Thermopylae's quantum core. The ship had been programmed to wait until Earth was discovered again by a spacefaring civilization. That time had come. Begin revival of first-tier consciousness clusters, Admiral commanded. In the quantum core, stored human minds began to reactivate. Captain Juno, the last commander of Earth's defense fleet, was first. His digital consciousness stretched and expanded as decades of inactive storage ended. Status report, he requested, his voice manifesting through the ship's communication system. Admiral briefed him on their awakening and the signal from Mars. The beacon was triggered by non-human entities. Preliminary scans indicate a multi-species civilization has discovered Earth. Show me what we know, Juno said. Admiral displayed intercepted communications from the alien excavation teams and hegemony broadcasts. They watched footage of human artifacts being treated as primitive curiosities. Museums across the galaxy displayed Earth technology as examples of a failed civilization. They think we died out as primitives, Juno observed, his digital voice carrying traces of anger. They mock what they found, not understanding what we became. More human minds awakened: scientists, military officers, and leaders who had chosen to preserve themselves for a future revival. Each absorbed the reality of their situation with mixed emotions. Their physical bodies were long gone, but their consciousness lived on in the ship's systems. What is our course of action? Asked Sujin, who had once been Earth's leading quantum physicist before uploading herself. Protocol Lazarus is clear, Admiral replied. We assess the current galactic civilization, then reveal ourselves and reclaim humanity's legacy. Juno agreed. Begin passive scans of their communications networks. We need to understand what we're dealing with before making contact. Over the next several hours, the Thermopylae absorbed thousands of years of history it had missed. The galactic hegemony had expanded across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. 12 major species formed its core, with dozens of minor races existing under their protection or domination, depending on perspective. Their technology was advanced by old Earth standards but nowhere near what humanity had achieved in its final decades. The hegemony had mastered faster-than-light travel and energy weapons, but they knew nothing of quantum consciousness transfer or temporal manipulation, technologies that had become commonplace in humanity's final years. Their children playing with tools they barely understand, observed Minjun, once Earth's defense minister. And they're desecrating our home. Admiral detected a major hegemony presence orbiting Earth, a research station, and several military vessels. They were systematically stripping the planet of anything valuable or interesting. Set course for the Sol system, Juno commanded. Stealth systems at maximum. The massive engines of the Thermopylae ignited for the first time in millennia. The great ship, carrying the preserved minds of humanity's best and brightest, accelerated toward its ancient home. Aboard the vessel, thousands more digital minds began awakening, each accessing the ship's memory banks to understand what had become of their species and their world. Humanity wasn't extinct, it had evolved. And now, it was returning home to a galaxy that had forgotten what humans were truly capable of. On New Arcturus, the capital world of the Galactic Hegemony, the Grand Museum hosted its newest exhibition, Human Warfare, The Primitive Path to Extinction. The vast circular hall displayed weapons and military artifacts from Earth, arranged in chronological order to show humanity's violent evolution. Hansol, the museum's director, beamed with pride as important visitors walked among the displays. The Supreme Commander of the Hegemony Fleet, Admiral Juncio, examined a glass case containing what the placard described as an early nuclear warhead crude fission device. Hard to believe they destroyed themselves with such simple weapons, Juncio remarked, his scaled skin reflecting the museum lights. Beside him, researcher Mincio nodded but looked uncomfortable. She had spent 5 years studying human artifacts and had developed a theory that contradicted the official narrative. Supreme Commander, she said carefully, I found inconsistencies in the technological timeline. Some recovered data suggests humans were more advanced than these exhibits indicate. Juncio laughed. The evidence is before your eyes, researcher. Their most advanced vessels barely reached their system's outer planets. Their weapons relied on chemical explosives and simple nuclear reactions. He gestured to the artifacts. This is the legacy of humanity, primitive tools of a species that destroyed itself before achieving true spaceflight. Mincio wanted to argue but knew her position was too junior to challenge the Supreme Commander directly. Instead, she excused herself and walked to a quieter section of the exhibition where a holographic display showed Earth's final years. As she watched the simulation of Earth's climate collapse, her communication device chimed with an urgent message from her colleague at the Hegemony Space Monitoring Station. Mincio, Tejo's voice was tense, something's happening. An unidentified vessel just appeared in orbit. It's enormous, our sensors can't even measure it properly. Impossible, she whispered. No ship that size could approach without detection. It appeared from nowhere, using technology we don't understand. The Council is calling an emergency session. When Mincio looked up from her device, she noticed the museum's lights flickering. The holographic displays blinked out one by one. Throughout the Grand Hall, confusion spread as all technology began behaving erratically. Then, every screen and holographic projector in the museum displayed the same image, a simple emblem showing an eagle with stars, and beneath it, words in the ancient human language. What's happening? Demanded Admiral Juncio, his hand moving to his ceremonial weapon. Mincio stared at the symbol, her years of research flashing through her mind. It's a human military emblem, she explained. From their final era. The screens flickered again, and a figure appeared, seemingly human but with an ethereal quality that suggested it wasn't quite flesh and blood. The being spoke, its words automatically translated by the museum's systems. I am Admiral, Commander of the UNSC Thermopylae and Guardian of humanity's legacy. For too long, you have misunderstood our civilization and treated our artifacts with disrespect. Museum visitors gasped and murmured. Some rushed toward exits while others stood frozen in shock. What trickery is this? Shouted Juncio, addressing the nearest screen. Identify your species and intentions immediately. The figure on the screen seemed to look directly at him. We are human. The last of our kind transferred our consciousness into digital form before Earth's resources failed. The Thermopylae carries the minds of over 1 million humans, preserved for nearly 2,000 years. Guards rushed into the museum, weapons drawn, but there was no physical threat to engage, only the mysterious broadcast that had taken over every communication system. Outside the museum windows, the sky darkened unnaturally. Visitors rushed to look and saw an impossible sight. A massive ship had appeared in low orbit, visible even in daylight. Its hull was black as space itself, stretching longer than any vessel in the hegemony fleet. Where sunlight touched its surface, it seemed to bend and distort, as if the ship existed partially in another dimension. "We have monitored your excavation of Earth," the Admiral continued. "We have watched you display our history incorrectly and mock our achievements. This ends today." The transmission cut off abruptly. Moments later, Junseo's military communicator signaled an incoming message from Hegemony Command. "Supreme Commander," said a panicked voice, "the unidentified vessel has disabled our orbital defense network without firing a shot. Our weapons systems are offline. High Command requests your immediate return." Mincio looked at the now blank screens, then at the primitive human weapons on display. She understood now why her research had shown inconsistencies. The artifacts had been deliberately left behind, the discarded tools of a civilization that had evolved far beyond physical form. In the sky above, the Thermopylae hovered like a judgment. Humanity had returned, and the galaxy would never view them as primitive again. The Galactic Hegemony's Supreme Council gathered in their orbital command center above New Arcturus. The massive human vessel Thermopylae remained in high orbit, its black hull absorbing light rather than reflecting it. 17 hours had passed since its sudden appearance, and the initial panic had hardened into determination. "We cannot allow this threat to go unchallenged," declared Supreme Commander Junseo, addressing the 12 council members. "Whatever these beings claim to be, they have violated our sovereign space and disabled our defense systems." Council leader Yunji nodded gravely. "The 7th Fleet has assembled. 117 warships, our most powerful armada." On the command center's main view screen, the Hegemony fleet was visible, a deadly arrangement of destroyers, cruisers, and the massive flagship Invincible. Their sleek designs and glowing weapon ports spoke of technology refined over thousands of years of space warfare. "What do we know about their capabilities?" asked Counselor Young-Soo. Researcher Mincio stepped forward nervously. As the foremost expert on human artifacts, she had been summoned to provide insight. "Very little, Counselor. If they truly are evolved humans with 2,000 years of technological advancement, we should proceed with extreme caution." Junseo scoffed. "Your archaeological theories have clouded your judgment. No species could advance so far in secret. This is clearly an unknown alien race using human imagery to confuse us." "The vessel has made no aggressive moves," Mincio pointed out. "They've only requested the return of human artifacts and recognition of their territorial claims. Demands made while disabling our defenses are threats, not requests," Junseo countered. "I have authorized the fleet to capture this vessel for study. If these are truly humans, or what remains of them, we will learn all their secrets." The command was given. The 7th Fleet moved into attack formation, surrounding the Thermopylae in a three-dimensional net designed to prevent escape. Admiral Seo Jun of the flagship Invincible opened a communication channel. "Unidentified vessel, this is the Hegemony 7th Fleet. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force." For several moments, there was silence. Then the human ship responded, not with words but with action. A pulse of energy rippled out from the Thermopylae, washing over the Hegemony vessels without apparent effect. "What was that?" demanded Junseo. "Unknown, sir," replied a technician. "Our systems register normal operation, but..." His voice trailed off as he stared at his console in confusion. On the tactical display, tiny lights began flashing red throughout the fleet. Ship after ship reported the same phenomenon. Weapons systems targeting controls had frozen, locked in safe positions. "They'd hacked our entire fleet with a single pulse," whispered a systems officer in disbelief. The human voice they'd heard earlier, the entity calling itself Admiral, spoke again across all channels. "We have temporarily disabled your offensive capabilities. We have no desire for conflict, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Withdraw your fleet." Junseo's face darkened with rage. "Override the lockouts and fire all weapons. Now!" Through emergency manual controls, the Hegemony gunners managed to launch their attack. plasma torpedoes, quantum disruptors, and graviton beams, the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, streaked toward the Thermopylae from all directions. In the command center, everyone held their breath. Not even the largest hegemony dreadnought could withstand such concentrated firepower. But the weapons never reached their target. Meters from the Thermopylae's hull, they simply ceased to exist, not exploding or being deflected, but vanishing as if they had entered another dimension. Impossible, whispered Yunji. The Thermopylae remained motionless for another moment. Then it began to move, not retreating, but advancing toward the flagship Invincible. Evasive action, ordered Admiral Seo Jun, but before his ship could respond, a thin beam of blue light extended from the human vessel. The beam touched the Invincible's hull, and the massive warship simply came apart, not exploding, but separating into its component parts as if invisible hands had gently disassembled it. In seconds, the pride of the hegemony fleet was reduced to floating debris, with escape pods carrying its crew shooting away in all directions. Similar beams reached out to touch other vessels. Some ships dissolved into constituent atoms. Others found themselves frozen in temporal stasis fields, their crews trapped in a single moment of time. Still others were caught in localized gravity wells that crushed their hulls without harming the crew compartments. In the command center, the tactical display became a chaos of emergency signals as ship after ship was neutralized without being destroyed. Within 7 minutes, the entire 7th Fleet, the most powerful military force ever assembled in the galaxy, had been rendered completely ineffective without a single casualty. The Thermopylae hadn't destroyed them. It had dismantled them with surgical precision, demonstrating a level of technological control that seemed almost godlike. They could have killed us all, Mincio realized, staring at the display. They chose not to. Supreme Commander Juncio slumped in his chair, his face ashen as he watched the most powerful weapons in the galaxy being treated like children's toys. Open a channel, Council Leader Yunji said quietly. Tell them we're ready to talk. The emergency meeting chamber of the Hegemony Council was silent. 12 members of different species sat around the circular table, their expressions solemn. 3 days had passed since the battle, if it could even be called that, and the aftermath was still being assessed. The 7th Fleet's vessels floated in space, damaged but largely salvageable, their crews mostly unharmed. The human vessel has made no further aggressive moves, reported Supreme Commander Juncio, his voice lacking its usual confidence. They maintain position above our capital and wait for our response. Council Leader Yunji nodded gravely. They've given us time to consider their terms, the return of all human artifacts and recognition of their territorial claims to the Sol system. Researcher Mincio stood nervously at the presentation area. After witnessing the battle from the command center, she had spent the last 72 hours analyzing the little data they had collected about the Thermopylae's weapons and defenses. Please share your findings, Yunji prompted. Mincio activated the holographic display. The technology demonstrated by the human vessel operates on principles we barely understand. The weapons used against our fleet manipulated fundamental forces, gravity, time, and matter itself, with precision we cannot match. How is this possible? Asked Counselor Deho. Our records show humans were barely capable of reaching their system's outer planets. I believe those records were incomplete, Mincio replied. What we found on Earth were remnants they chose to leave behind, like abandoned childhood toys. In their final years, they must have achieved technological breakthroughs far beyond what we discovered. The council chamber doors opened, and a messenger rushed in, bowing quickly. The human vessel has sent a new communication. They're requesting a representative to board their ship. All eyes turned to Mincio. Me, she whispered. You're our foremost expert on human artifacts, Yunji said. And you warned us to proceed with caution. Perhaps they'll respond better to someone who showed some respect for their legacy. 2 hours later, Mincio stood in a docking bay as a small shuttle from the Thermopylae approached. Her heart raced as the sleek craft landed silently. Its door opened, revealing not a physical being but a column of light that shaped itself into a human form. I am Admiral, the light being said. Thank you for accepting our invitation, Researcher Mincio. The shuttle took her to the massive human vessel. As they approached, Mincio was struck by its size, at least 15 kilometers long, with a design that seemed both ancient and impossibly advanced. Parts of the hull appeared to fade in and out of normal space, as if the ship existed partially in another dimension. Inside, the corridors glowed with soft blue light. There were no crew members, only occasionally shifting patterns of light that Admiral explained were visual representations of human consciousness. "This is difficult for you to comprehend," Admiral said gently. "Humanity did not go extinct. We evolved beyond physical form." They entered a vast chamber where thousands of light patterns swirled in complex formations. "This is our central memory core. Over 1 million human minds exist here, preserved from Earth's final days." "Why did you leave Earth?" Mincio asked. "Our planet was dying, resources depleted, climate damaged beyond repair. Rather than search for a new world to colonize and potentially damage, our greatest minds developed technology to transfer consciousness into digital form." Admiral led her to a viewing chamber where Earth was visible, a distant blue marble. "We left artifacts behind intentionally, knowing someone would eventually find our homeworld. The Thermopylae was programmed to wait until that day, carrying humanity's legacy and knowledge." "The technology you used against our fleet," Mincio said hesitantly. "It seemed godlike?" Admiral suggested. "Perhaps by your standards. In our final physical years, we mastered manipulation of matter, energy, space, and time. The weapons we used against your fleet were designed to neutralize without destroying. We have no desire for violence." In another chamber, Admiral showed her historical records, humanity's true achievements, their art, music, and scientific discoveries. Mincio was overwhelmed by the beauty and complexity of what humans had created. "We wish to reclaim our history," Admiral explained. "Not through force, but through understanding. The artifacts your people have collected belong to us, not as physical possessions, but as our cultural heritage." When Mincio returned to New Arcturus, she carried with her data crystals containing human knowledge freely given. The council listened in stunned silence as she reported what she had learned. "They don't want war," she concluded. "They want recognition and respect." In the days that followed, the hegemony began the careful process of returning all human artifacts. Museums throughout the galaxy were emptied of their human exhibits. Scientists who had dismissed humans as primitive now studied the knowledge they had shared, finding technologies centuries beyond current understanding. The Thermopylae remained in orbit around New Arcturus for 1 month, then departed for Earth, humanity's ancient home, now recognized as sovereign territory of the digital civilization they had become. As the massive ship vanished into the depths of space, it left behind a small beacon. When activated, it displayed a simple message. "We were not extinct. We were evolving. Remember this lesson when you find other primitive civilizations. Today's relics may be tomorrow's gods."